The Senate will formally set the stage today for its impeachment trial of President Trump. It's the first ever of a president running in an election year. House leaders delivered the articles of impeachment yesterday. Investigators released more evidence from a man involved in the operation that triggered this whole impeachment inquiry.
That man is Lev Parnas. He worked for the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and was a central figure in the scheme to pressure Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son. In explosive interviews yesterday, Parnas linked the president and other administration officials to the effort, including the vice president, attorney general, and the national security advisor at the time. Nancy Cordes is on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, good morning. So the big question is credibility. What do we know about Parnas?
Well, Parnas claims that he was the man on the ground for Rudy Giuliani and the president himself, tasked with making sure that Ukraine opened an investigation into the Bidens. Now, Democrats concede that Parnas has some credibility issues. He was recently charged with federal campaign finance violations, but Parnas says that in no uncertain terms that the president and even the vice president knew what he was up to and that there's more evidence to come.
President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements. I wouldn't do anything without the consent of Rudy Giuliani or the president.
Rudy Giuliani's former associate, Lev Parnas, insists he was working on President Trump's behalf when he pressured Ukrainian leaders.
It was never about corruption. It was strictly about the Burisma, which included Hunter Biden and Joe Biden.
President Trump has denied even knowing Parnas.
He lied. I mean, me and him didn't watch football games together. We didn't eat hot dogs, but he knew exactly who we were.
Parnas says that while he was pushing for an investigation into the Bidens, his connection to the president was made clear to the Ukrainians.
We put Rudy on the phone. Rudy relayed to him basically that we were there on behalf of the president of the United States.
In a statement to MSNBC, Giuliani denied doing that. Parnas says his connection to the White House was evident when the vice president canceled his trip to President Zelensky's May 20th inauguration. Parnas had warned the Ukrainians that no U.S. official would attend the inauguration without the Biden investigation announced.
Now they realize that what I was telling is true.
Parnas, an indicted businessman, says a host of top officials knew about the Ukraine pressure campaign, including former National Security Advisor John Bolton.
You believe he knows what the administration was pressuring Ukraine to do?
Bolton, 100%.
And Attorney General William Barr.
Attorney General Barr was basically on the team.
A Justice Department spokeswoman says that is 100% false. Parnas has handed over a trove of documents to House investigators, including text messages, voicemails, and pictures of him with members of the Trump family. Democrats say the evidence bolsters their case that the Senate trial should include new witnesses and documents.
I don't know how any member of this body could pick up the newspaper this morning, read this new revelation, and not conclude that the Senate needs access to relevant documents like these in the trial of President Trump.
Today, the 7 House managers who will essentially serve as the prosecutors in this Senate trial are going to walk the articles of impeachment to the Senate, where they will read the articles aloud on the Senate floor. Chief Justice John Roberts will be sworn in, and he will in turn swear in the 100 senators who are going to serve as jurors. When the trial begins next week, senators will have to sit quietly. They can only listen. They can't talk to one another. They can't even bring in any reading materials, Gayle, that don't pertain to the trial.
Boy, Nancy, people's heads were spinning in Washington yesterday, but let's go back to Parnas for a second. Felt like I needed to have a little teacup with my pinky finger out. He was spilling so much tea, as the kids of today say. So what are we hearing about these new details from what he said and how that could affect the Senate trial?
Well, it's a real bombshell, Gayle, because he's the first individual to say point blank that he was working to pressure the Ukrainians on behalf of the president and with his knowledge. Others have couched it. They've said that this was their understanding that this is what the president wanted, or that they heard it secondhand. Some Senate Republicans, however, are questioning the timing of all this. They want to know why it wasn't included in the House impeachment investigation, and that might lead some of them to argue that they shouldn't consider consider it when they're sitting, listening to this trial, trying to decide whether the president should be kept in office.
Yeah, a lot to sort out there. Thank you very much, Nancy.